Well, g'day everyone. Welcome to the podcast. This is Life in the Peloton, but this is the new series that I've kicked off called the Race Communique. Being across at the Tour de France this year, I was over there with the cycling podcast. I got the itch and I thought it'd be great to sit down and just talk about what is going on in the World Tour Peloton each month. That's my idea anyway. I think I'm going to launch this series next year, but I wanted to do something after the Tour de France. And I've decided to do it together with Durbridge and Tom Southam. We're going to communicate. We're going to talk about what is going on in the racing at the moment. What are the latest trends? What is the gossip? I don't know, everything that's going on in the World Tour or whatever interests us at the moment, we're going to discuss it. I think it's great because Durbridge, he is racing in the World Tour. Tom Southam, he is a director sportif in the World Tour. And I am just a fan of the racing now. Of course, I've got my experience from when I was racing, but more, I'm just interested what is going on over there now because it is changing so fast. And what I want to do is bring it to you guys in the Life in the Peloton style, break down what is life is like as a pro, what that life is like, talk about the racing, and then go from there. Who knows what it's going to be like? I bring you the first episode. This is more or less capturing what happened in this year's amazing Tour de France. Plus, we talk about a little bit about the end, what is coming up. Of course, there's a little cheeky quiz at the end as well. Let me know what you think, guys. Sit back and enjoy. Here we go. The inaugural Race Communique. All right, boys, let's kickstart this. This is the first edition of the Race Communique. Well, it is the first edition of the online Race Communique. This series did kick off back in January at the Tour Down Under with my good friend Tom Southam. But now we've thought this is a good idea. Why don't we review what's going on in the peloton, in the racing, and just the trends and the rumors, the myths, whatever it is, each month of the year. And we're going to start right now, after the Tour de France, the biggest race of the year. I'm joined by, once again, my good friend, DS at EF Education-EasyPost, Tom Southam. Welcome back to the Race Communique.
Thanks, mate. Nice to be back. All fresh after the tour. Raring to go, mate.
I'm also joined here by another very, very good friend and old racing partner, training half-wheeler, big friend of the podcast, Durbridge. He is a rider on Jayco-Alula. Just finished the Tour de France. Durbs, welcome to the pod, mate.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me back on. I'm looking forward to hashing out some Race Communique with you boys.
Well, we don't really know how this is going to go, so let's just kick it off. And I've written up some kind of rough agenda that we're going to cover. It's mainly going to be about the Tour de France. We're all over there. We all got to see each other a little bit. So, guys, what is the latest news, Derbs? I'm going to cut straight to you, mate, because what's been happening with you? How did you actually get through the race per se? The Tour de France is just over. We're only a couple of days out. The dust has settled a bit now. I guess you get this feeling now. I always had this feeling. You finish the race, you sort of hate the race by the end, but actually a couple of days after, you've got a chance to review it and go, right, how am I feeling about the race? What's your thoughts coming out of the tour so far, mate?
Well, I'm looking at myself in the Zoom call at the moment. I look buckled. But we're only a day out, really. We're on the Champs-Elysees on Sunday evening. And I guess you get that little post-tour depression. I always get a bit depressed that it's over, don't really know what to do. I sort of asked on the WhatsApp group what my program was for Monday morning, just as I was a bit lost. But yeah, no, I mean, in a nutshell, for us to wrap up the tour, personally was quite good. Most days I was busy. We had Dylan Groenewegen, our sprinter, and Simon Yates, our GC guy. So every day was either for Simon or for Dylan. And we didn't come out with a stage win, which was unfortunate, but we came out with, 3 or 4 second places, and Simon was 4th on GC. So, yeah, didn't quite hit the target. I guess we were going for podium, so 4th is, next best. So got to be happy with that. And Dylan was close in a couple of stages. But me personally, I'm pretty tired. But, I pulled up okay.
What's pretty tired at this point? So everyone out there is wondering what pretty tired is. That's like me waking up sort of 5 a.m. I'm feeling pretty tired this morning. Give us a level of pretty tired.
Well, I went for a ride before, and I'm like a swollen balloon. I'm like, 3 kilos, maybe 4 kilos more than the day of the Champs-Élysées. I feel puffy. You sleep, but you can't really sleep. When you go to sleep and you're that tired, you make that little noise, just like that. And my quads are so sore. And, so I'm like, I'm wrecked. Yeah, I'm wrecked.
You sound like a Michelin man that's been run over, right?
Yeah. So, that's my level of tired.
The other side of it, Southam, you were there in the race, but you're in the car. You just got to cruise along with the arm out the window. I guess you sort of got one arm sun-tanned because it was a hot Tour de France this year. I was over there for a couple of weeks. I got to experience the heat wave. How are you feeling, mate? Couple days after, yeah.
Man, I am absolutely as fresh as a daisy. I mean, driving 3,000 Ks in 3 weeks, it's a piece of piss. But no, I mean, it's funny what Luke said because I have the same, because I make the schedule, right? And I have this kind of weird thing when I don't have to organize anyone on Monday morning. So I've got I don't have to worry about what time the bus leaves. I don't have to worry about if there's a traffic jam or anything like that, or whether Amador's going to make it, down to the bus on time. And it's I've got no one to organize. Maybe I can go and organize these people over here doing their shopping or whatever. So it's a strange one when you come out of it because it's such a strict routine for everyone. Everything you do for 3 weeks is basically based on a schedule, maximize your time of recovery or get here on time, or this person's going to do this now. Then all of a sudden you're just in this, you just got a whole day when you don't. Yeah. It's strange for, I think, everyone.
Do you miss that? There's one thing I used to always miss is weirdly doing my own stuff, taking care of myself, doing your own washing and doing your own dishes. It's a weird thing. I remember, Durbs, when we were at the Classics, might sound weird, everyone listening is it was nice to escape the hotel to go back and cook your own dinner one night. It's sort of to take control of your own life again.
Yeah, we sat around the hotel on the final evening before we went to the Champs-Élysées, and we were all just sitting around, we had one beer and we're just sort of chatting. And then Chris Jorgensen, our Danish teammate of ours, is like, what's your one thing what's the first thing you want to do when you finish your Grand Tour? Everyone went around, hang out with your kids, and one guy said, I'll have a nap, something like that. And then, but for me personally, it was just I just wanted to cook, just go to the kitchen, prepare my own meal, open the fridge, maybe don't get anything out of it, close it, then open it again and have a look, nothing in there, close it again.
Have you cooked yet?
I cooked last night actually. Yeah, had just a sandwich more or less, but it was satisfying sandwich.
I love those dinners, sandwich dinners.
Cooked a sandwich.
Yeah, well, I cooked the toast. The toast was cooking. There was heat applied, but yeah.
All right, let's talk about the race a little bit because I thought it was actually one of the best Tour de France's I've watched in my years of watching the Tour. I've actually gone back and watched the 2003 Tour again in preparation for this podcast. It led me down a rabbit hole. I was doing a bit of research about 2003. That is my favourite Tour de France. Next thing I know, I'm watching the full race. Such a great tour. I'm only about an hour into it, about stage 4, guys. Should we just talk about 2-3? No, let's talk about this tour. 20 years later, and it's produced an awesome tour. We already know that Vingegaard, he got away with the victory, his second Tour de France win. Pogačar, close second. And that whole rivalry was really interesting to watch from the outside. I'm actually more interested to know what it was like on the inside for you guys. Do you sort of care about that? Because you're worrying about your own teams. What's your opinion on that whole rivalry and how it sort of played out this year? Durbs?
We definitely, our race meeting was UAE Jumbo, what they will do. Because in the end, when it became such a sparring match up until probably stage 16, we just would have to work out what they were going to do. The good thing is that, we had Adam Yates and Simon Yates, so we might have a bit of an idea of what UAE might do because the brothers talk. But we sort of had to just do our own race.
Would they talk? So you would get intel from Simon?
It was pretty easy to see in terms of if UAE were going to control it or not, as if 5 guys line up behind the car. So, you might know it in the meeting, or you might know it just on the start line. But, for example, someone might say, UAE going to control today. Or and you're like, okay, sounds good. But, and look, same with Tom trying to put guys in the breakaway. It's just like, you would see that straight away. As soon as UAE just came to the front, or Jumbo would come to the front, to be honest, it's not going to be a breakaway day. Or, they're all chilled at the back and then no one's really at the front, not on the car. And then all of a sudden you realise, okay, well, it's actually, it's a chance today. So, you had to really sort of wait to see what Jumbo or UAE did, because there were such powerhouse teams that if they want it to be back, it will be back. And if they want to control it, it will be controlled. If they want to let it get out of control and make it chaos, then it'll also be that too. So, that's just the reality of it. So, we definitely were dictated by those two teams and that battle for quite some time.
We did it was almost the opposite, because the control was so strong, and we had to go for the brakes, right? Because we didn't have, you guys were still on GC. So we basically said, right, we're going to go in the break today no matter what. And you guys just need to be aware, we've got no control over what UAE or Visma are going to do. And if they want to close it, it's going to get closed. Really sorry, it's not going to work out. But we still had to try and go, which is normally you can pick those days right, it's going to make it today, lads. In you go, sort of thing. Those days didn't exist. So it's instead it's right, we have to go, we got to go. And if it makes it, it's going to have nothing to do with us, basically. But you guys are going to have to do your race up front anyway. So
you didn't really have the option, did you? That's the thing. You have to roll the dice, because if you stay in the peloton, there's 2 guys that can win the bike race. That's it, really. So, yeah.
Yeah, you can't do anything. It's
But tell me what was going on here, because most of the stages I was watching, these were some of the hardest, most ridiculous stages I have seen for such a long time, where the GC guys were just in the brakes. These weren't necessarily brakes. These were just the splits of the peloton. I haven't seen this. Maybe you see this once or twice in a Grand Tour, but this was continually happening. What was that like, even from the DS point of view or from the rider's point of view? I'd love to know from a rider's point of view. Were you just losing your mind, Derb, going, seriously, come on, guys, why are you going up the road? What about me? What about me at the back here? Seriously.
Oh, man, it was insane. I think the day that sort of all came to a head was stage 19, where you thought, that was just insane. We averaged over 49 k's an hour, and it was 2,500 meters of climbing. And it was just sort of Trek may control for Mads Pedersen. If not, it'll be a large breakaway and they'll go on to win. And it just started, and if Tom's, for example, if there's 2 teams that can win from a hard stage, if it comes back, well, then there's 18 other teams that literally want to get in the breakaway. So 18 times 8, everyone is just this is my only chance. And so they just, every day, everyone just threw the kitchen sink at it, going this is my only chance. So what ended up happening was, it was just mayhem. There was no control. There was I just couldn't understand. It's okay, well, I just got to hold the wheel. I ended up being in the break that day, but the break that went away to win went at 95k into the race. I didn't put one attack in until 95k in. I just survived in the wheels squealing, and then all of a sudden we came through an intermediate sprint and 30 guys went away, and then everyone went that's enough. And then 30 guys went on to win that day. But imagine that going in, okay, I'm just going to have to suffer for 95 kilometres and that'll be the break of the day. No one's ever going to think that.
So what's changed then? Is Is it lack of control? Is say a team like Jumbo-Visma going, you know what, we don't care. We would rather this just continually race because we're happy to just put guys in it. Is it lack of control, or is it just literally the power of the peloton and they just cannot control it? Or are they just throwing their hands up and just showing no control?
It's a bit of both.
Yeah. I mean, like when you get to those days now, like Luke said, it's like there's so little else left out there that is the day. So stage 19, you could say from 2 weeks before the tour, this is the day for the break. And there's 150 riders basically with nothing, right? So when one team misses it, they just have to pull. Like we were there in that situation. We had to ride behind that 9-man group with Uno X and Israel. Because it's like, well, we got nothing tomorrow because it's a GC day. And we had nothing yesterday because it was supposed to be a sprint. So we have to throw absolutely everything at it. And I think there's a lot of teams, like, if you look at the fight for the polka dot jersey, like, that was pretty intense and that dictated a lot of the racing. And who normally cares about the polka dot jersey? Basically, no one.
Yeah.
So, like the teams class, those secondary categories, like, all of a sudden, they're valuable, you know? Because those two teams are so dominant at the top.
Well, let's just drop down and have a look at the next year. And I've called it the best of the rest, the Yates's, because it sort of seemed like that. And I made this comment when I was over there that in any other race, you know, with the two favourites away there, Vingegaard and Pogačar, there was actually a really good race behind. And that would normally be sort of the GC race that we would see in any other race, maybe like the Giro or the Vuelta, or even in like a Paris-Nice or something like that. The best of the rest, I guess, the two Yateses. Tell me what you guys sort of think about, you know, these guys sort of coming to the front. I know they've been there for a long time and doing different things. You know, Simon at the Giro we've seen, but Adam, I feel like Adam has almost sort of found his place there at UAE, even though he's sort of been searching for it after Green Edge and then moving to Ineos. It seemed like both of them seemed like they were at the best of themselves that I've seen in the last few years.
Oh, for sure, I can confirm that. Like Simon was in some of the best shape he's ever done. You know, I don't know exact numbers, but he was saying like, yeah, this is the best stuff that I've done. The level is just so high. I think we saw Geraint Thomas the year before pretty much dominate that third position. Like it wasn't as big a challenge to see who was going to be third. It was like, G's third, he's clearly third. There was a big gap, obviously, to Vingegaard and Pogačar, but like G was always third. But that third place was chased all the way until we moved up onto fourth place on the final day. So, you know, it was chased all the way in. And I think everyone knew going in that, okay, we can't do anything about Pogačar and Vingegaard, but that third place is really valuable. And to be standing on the podium in Paris, you know, like that's massive for the team, for any team. So it was good to see Adam like right up there and get his podium that he deserves, I think. You know, he's been fourth twice now in Grand Tours, once in the Vuelta, once in the Tour. So for him to get on the podium at a Grand Tour, I think he really deserves that. And yeah, I mean, it was good to see those two boys. They sort of help each other out as much as they can, you know. I don't know if you noticed.
Yeah, do you believe that? You know, like it's easy to sort of see that, and you know, you can read between the lines. It looks like they sort of are, but you know, you look at that stage where they came into the finish and Adam got the best of Simon there, and I don't know. I just imagined that. How many times in their life would those two have, I could imagine if I had a twin brother, you'd be racing down the street here in Lansfield where I live going, oh, imagine one day we'd actually be sprinting for a stage of the Tour de France. Could you imagine, you know, and that scenario actually played out. Southam, like, can you imagine what this would have been like? And I'm sure you would have done it yourself with your mates and even on your own as you were growing up as a rider, to actually have that play out in the Tour de France.
Oh man, I mean, it must be almost like dreamlike, you know, because it's the chances of that happening, like in reality, just the two of you from the whole peloton.
The two of them.
Like, I mean, there's not even like a third right, like Pello Bilbao just hanging out there, you know. It's like it's just those two. But I would actually love to know, Durbo, what the like. I mean, like what happened at the finish there, because it's like, is there an agreement? What's going to happen? Are they going to sprint? And in the end, it just ended. And I was like, that's it.
I mean, there was two two situations, I think, in the race that they really did help each other out. But especially that first day when they went away, Simon was laughing because when he came across to Adam, Adam goes to him, "Oh, you idiot." Said that to him because if there's anyone else, Adam was allowed to sit on because he was, had Pogačar in the back. But he's like, because it's you, I want to help you. He was so angry that Simon had come across to him and Simon's like, "Hey, mate, I'm just coming with you." He's like, "Why did you chase me? Because now I have to work with you." And then Adam's on the radio, "Can I work with Simon?" And then he sits on and Simon's just going for it and then he's just waiting. "Can I work with Simon, please?" And eventually they said, "Yeah, you can work with Simon." So then he started giving him a few turns. But when Simon came on the bus, he was laughing because he's like, when I got across to him, he was like, "Oh, you idiot." So, I was surprised that Adam beat him in the sprint. Obviously, I think Adam's level on that day was better than Simon's because it was slight uphill and you just see him ride Simon off the wheel. Normally, Simon is faster, and if it was flatter, maybe Simon would have wrapped him up. But in that sense, I think Adam was just stronger that day, to be honest.
Well, let's talk about the big two once again. And look, I'm a Pogačar fan. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's his socials. I don't know him personally. He just seems like a really relaxed, easygoing guy. And he's great as I say, I'm a journalist these days, so he's great as to cover, And Jonas is a little bit more of the robot, the laid back versus the robot. But at the end of the day, Jonas got the job done. I guess my question is to you guys, can Pog win again? They're 2-2. Who's going on to get the third? And maybe it's not one of them, who knows? But let's just say it's those two again next year. These two approaches, and I can imagine now, I don't know whether you guys have seen it, but on social media, you've got Pog doing a backflip into the swimming pool on the second rest day. That's all fun and games if he came away and won the race. But that is his character, and that's sort of true to what he is. And maybe that is Jonas's character too, to be the robot and be, very calculated. I can imagine the Pog's probably going to come under a bit of scrutiny from his team now. Maybe he needs to pull it back, not put it on the socials. I don't know. What are you guys thinking now? Can Pog do it again, Southam? And, in being in that team scenario as a DS and having to, rein riders in and things like that, what's your opinion on his approach to the tour, I guess?
I think that actually comes from the team. Firstly, the first thing I'd like to say is he won Flanders, right? So I almost get the feeling with him like winning the tour is part of just winning races, which is completely different to the approach that Visma and Vingegaard have, But when I went to the TT, and this is the example I use, when I went to the TT in the morning, they were parked next to each other, right? And the Visma setup was like the buses were super organized. They had like cooling tent and all this stuff. And then the UAE bus was parked facing the sun, so the sun was going to be in the faces of the riders while they warmed up. There were people kind of here, there. Like, it was two completely different worlds. And I feel like Pogačar's so good and UAE have done so well because he is so good. And part of that is like the little bit, not wilder, but like more relaxed way of doing things. Whereas Visma's was like clinical, and you could just see they're going to get the job done. And probably if you swapped Vingegaard and Pogačar, you swapped their teams, neither one of them would succeed. Vingegaard would need more structure than UAE could give him, and Pogačar would just probably go, what am I doing here at Visma? So does the approach from both the approach works from both teams because of the characters they've got, but does that mean that Pogačar's always going to be second in the Tour? Probably. But is he going to win Flanders? Is he going to win Liège? Could he win Roubaix? Yes. Like for all those other races. And I think the reason you like Pogačar is the same reason I do. You just see this guy who comes second, smiles, enjoys himself, and goes and wins. Yeah, he might go and win San Sebastian next week or something. Just because he loves racing, and it's cool. And it's like, I like that because I'm into cycling and the history of the sport and all of the sport, not just the Tour. I love the fact he won Flanders and then came second in the Tour. It's like, oh yeah, cool. I won Flanders, man. I mean, come on.
He's just there to race. Exactly. He's just there to race, and that's sort of what makes him so likable. Like you said, he doesn't need to go and win the Tour 5 times. Maybe he can, maybe he will. And let's move on quickly and talk about the other sort of classifications in the race. The green jersey, Jasper Philipsen actually had full control of that. But even though Mads Pedersen sort of fought him to the end there, he was only sort of he was over 100 points behind, so not really. But I did like that battle. Southam, what did you think of the sprint sort of classification there, mate?
I just want to talk about the green jersey itself.
Oh,
boys.
Crazy.
What? Why have they changed that? The yay or nay? Like I'm nay. Like
I couldn't see it.
When Simon Yates got it, that in the second stage, he was wearing it because he was second in the stage, got the green jersey. I didn't even know who he was. I was like, who is that guy in that green jersey when he was going over the top of the climb? Why have they changed that? I think it's a
sponsor. I think it is part of the sponsored colour of the green jersey is darker now.
Skoda.
Yeah, so it's like Skoda green is like darker than that, but like, so what? Like, I'm sure there's been jerseys sponsored in the past. Like, they're not going to change. Like, I didn't like it at all. Like, I mean, the Kermit green is just the way to go.
You couldn't see it. It was like making a jersey that's less visible than visible. It's like, how do you even do that?
Yeah.
Well, all right, let's go to the polka dot. A personal favourite jersey of mine, the full polka dots. I'm a big fan of everyone. When you get the polka dot, you got to go full polka dots when you get it. Gloves, socks, whatever it is, everything polka dots. But Southam, again, I've got to talk to you about this. Magnus Cort started the saluting for the polka dots throughout the stages. It's caught on. Ciccone even went in for it. Nielsen started it up mid-stage. Once they go over the KOMs, they started the saluting. What are you guys thinking of this?
To say I'm not a fan. It's
what's the Peloton thinking? Yeah, Dervo?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not around to see them take the points.
I think, if you're going to take one at the top that clinches the overall KOM jersey on the last climb of the race or whatever, like a fist is like, yeah, I've done it. But, I mean, I had difficulty at times when it's like basically the break that nobody wanted to go in that rolls down the road that,
the full post up.
The thing is, with Magnus, he's being a bit ironic, right? But then it's like if it catches on and everyone's doing it, they haven't got Magnus's sense of humour. So, yeah.
Well, and also Magnus, he was in Denmark, and they were going nuts there. So I sort of saw that.
But also the polka dot jersey was like, it actually really defined. It actually helped out Jumbo and also helped out Visma in a lot of ways because they didn't have to chase as much. Like these early mountains that they would have had to put, Christophe Laporte on or Van Hooijdonk or Mikkel Bjerg, like last two climbs, like Trek just rode. It was a full-on lead-out. Like they just did like, okay, we're going to keep it controlled. Mads Pedersen rode a Cat 1. And then Mads Pedersen like opened up with a full-on lead-out with Ciccone on the wheel, for a sprint there. So it's the first time I've seen it so hotly contested. I'm not sure if they change the structure of the points. Tom, you would know I was chasing it, but like actually it's much better now, no? Like
yeah, they got rid of. They used to have two, which counted double. So basically, it was always going to fall to a GC guy, but they only did one this year. So there was a chance to actually win it from racing the smaller climbs, so to speak. Put it more in the favour of not being Vingegaard again or Pogačar.
Well, Vingegaard, he ended up finishing third, but he was still substantially behind, even though he would have been collecting so many points just being at the finishes and more or less top 10 over every other climb. He was on 89 points and Ciccone was still 105. So I like that. I do like that it does go to, well, at the end of the day, I guess the best GC guy is the best climber. I don't know.
I mean, you're never going to get a guy that goes for it in the first week who's a bigger guy just taking the KOM jersey going to win it, because in the end of the day, it's too hard. Like in the way racing is going, the way just to make these breakaways, you are one of the strongest riders in the bike race. And you saw that with some of the breakaways that Nielsen was in, Ciccone was in. Like, these are just like proper breakaways. And if they hold on, I think even in Basque Country, even just to hold on for some of those points Nielsen did was actually quite difficult. Like, yeah, that's a proper effort.
Let's talk about who's walking away from this tour disappointed. I had a couple names put down. I sort of thought, an Australian, Ben O'Connor, I had high hopes on him being right up there in the GC, especially after, last year being right up there. Pino as well, saying his goodbye. Everyone sort of wants that fairy tale ending. I myself went through that, of course, with Roubaix. And you can't always get your fairy tale ending. And he's come out and said, you know what? This sort of was a fairy tale ending, being off the front in his home road. So maybe he did have that sort of finish he wanted. Maybe he's not walking away disappointed. Guys, any thoughts on who's walking away disappointed from this tour?
Maybe Gourmet from Wanty. I think him coming in, there was a big focus around him doing. But in fairness to him, last year's tour would have suited him better. There was a lot more stages that were sort of like those medium mountain stages that would suit like a Michael Matthews, a Betiola, like a Pedersen. There was probably only 1, 2 that potentially came back for like a drop all the sprinters, and then there's that punchier climb which suits Gourmet. So not to be too hard on him there, but I think like Wanty definitely would have come in with high hopes for him to win the stage, and didn't end up happening. Also, Venard as well, I don't think was as he was impressive, but compared to what he did last year, obviously disappointing.
Well, we've got to talk about it, just seeing as you brought it up. Like, everyone keeps crapping on about it, the Netflix effect. I wonder whether he was, because when he was doing those turns, I never seen him do this before, and I'm not questioning his commitment to the team, but it was almost like an act how hard he was pulling. He had to almost come to a standstill afterwards just to prove, hey, I've left it. Maybe you didn't even see this, Durbo, because you're obviously in the race, and questionable whether you saw this, Tom, either. But me, viewing it from TV, when he pulled off from his turns, he was pulling over to the side of the road, practically unclipping, just to show, hey, I've emptied it. I've squeezed the rag dry. Every drop of energy is out of my system. So I question whether he was doing that to say, hey, I am a team player. Look how hard I'm going. What's the feeling, Southam, about the whole Netflix factor? You're in the teams as well as you, Durbo. You get the feeling of what the Netflix, factor is. Everyone's wondering.
I mean, for me, like it wasn't so much like that factor. Wasn't so much the riders. It was more the fans by the side of the road. I don't know how you felt it, Durbo, but I felt this year was like pretty crazy, pretty intense. And like a different kind of fan that was there, not your traditional cycling fan. It was going pretty nuts, but that was a big effect for. I don't know how it would have come into. I don't think any of our guys raced differently. That's all, That's how
I think Netflix effect had a big effect. Like if you saw some of the fans that rode past, when I rode past them, like. They weren't there for the bike races. That makes sense. They were there for the whole spectacle of it, and maybe uneducated fans, which was awesome. I spoke to one of the guys from the ASO who does the race radio, and he was saying that like for him it was the most crowd that he'd ever seen throughout the whole tour, and maybe the Netflix
said PK.
Yeah. So he said that it was like for him being in the car, he just said it was just like insane, which I think is a good thing. But there's also, like you said, there's those fans that are uneducated about it, and they don't really understand. They got to get out of the way, and they're standing too close, and a couple of guys got knocked off the bike and all that sort of stuff. But like it was insane. But also where we started with the tour, we raced all the along the bottom. Which I'm not saying that maybe those towns are more cycling, friendly, or I don't know, like it just seemed to be being a bit pretty of a cool course, I think, for people to come and check out as well, where it was. We weren't in the north in Belgium or northern France.
Did you guys both have a Netflix crew with you?
We don't do it.
No. We did.
You did. EF did and Jayco didn't. Because I can't remember if I was speaking to you, Tom, or maybe it was another director when I was hanging around the buses, but they said that having the Netflix crew there in the bus did change the way riders were and how honest they were and how relaxed they were around the bus. They weren't themselves. They knew the cameras were on them and they were just slightly different. Did you notice that, Tom?
Yeah, I think you would have been speaking to one man.
Oh, yeah.
It's a big camera and a cameraman, and there's microphones all the way around the bus. And I think it's hard to be yourself in those moments, you know? It's hard for the director to be himself. We had one moment where after a crash, the first time you see a rider, you know, it can be quite an emotional time for a rider, and there's also a camera there, you know, which is really weird from my perspective, because you want to be honest, and it's a time to be, you know, genuinely. It's not about the race; it's about supporting the kid, or you know, and it can be hard to have such an obvious camera. It's not a GoPro that's hidden or something like that. And on the bus with the riders in the morning, there was I think it's a bit harder to get that kind of. There's no debate, because nobody wants to be seen as this is the person who's saying let's not do that or going against the team. So that debate, like you both know, it's healthy at times. Someone says, "Hang on a minute, what about this? What if this happens?" And then as a DS, you need that to push you to think about other things. But we don't get it. It's just yep, okay, yep. So I think that is people holding back a little bit.
What do you think Durbo has changed just listening to that? And obviously you guys have had a cameraman travelling with you ever since I was back in Green Edge since 2012. The cameraman's changed over those years, but there's always been a camera inside the bus in Green Edge, Jayco, Mitchelton, whatever you want to call the team. Yet I felt like it didn't change things that Tom was saying. Just from hearing that and understanding the differences, what do you think has been the main difference between having a camera in the bus the whole time and having a Netflix camera in the bus?
Oh, yeah. I think a good example was it's like when we had Amazon Prime did a documentary on our team about cooking in the Tour de France, was back in 2017. And we had the same setup. We had a big camera, all mics on the bus, and then I ended up crashing out first stage, and I was this rider, Tom was talking to, I was out the back of the bus and I'm going home from the Tour de France, the first stage, and Whitey's trying to tell me, you got to go home because you broke your ankle, more or less, and, the camera's in my face and I'm crying because I'm going home from the Tour de France. There's all the emotion. I hated that moment, in every way. I wanted to get the hell out of my face.
Pretending to cry, you mean? Or?
No, no, I was genuinely upset, but I was get the hell out of my face. But the only thing is, because I didn't know the person behind the camera and how that would be used and how he would portray me. And I think the reason that we've always had a camera on our bus is because we trust the guy behind the camera. And I think maybe it's just because it's the first 2 years we had Netflix, and maybe it's the same crew that comes back every time, and they know what coverage they're going to post to people out in the public, that you're going to be I trust that this guy's going to not flick me here, and I might say something, but he's not going to portray me in a way. So it's that element of trust that we had Dan Jones for many years, and then now we've got Sam Flanagan, who's the same guy since Dan Jones. So I know Sam. I might say something on the dispute in a team meeting, but I know Sam's going to be I might not use that, and I trust that he's not going to use that. So I think that's probably with this Netflix thing is if it is something is to continue, and obviously if the fans are through the roof and it's a great Tour de France and everyone's loving it, it is going to continue. It is the reality, but it is getting that element of trust behind the camera that that you're not going to be I've said something a bit skewy, and he's going to make sure to post it just for a story.
All right, we've got to talk about Lantern Rouge, because I always love talking about the last rider. It's a position that I was actually just reading today that one of the riders who finished Lantern Rouge 3 times, I'm not going to say his name because he's going to feature in the quiz at the end. He said, "You don't go for Lantern Rouge, it comes for you." I sort of like that. Well, you don't chase Lantern Rouge, it chases you, I think the exact quote was. But
I always think about it like this: you're the first rider to not finish. No, to not finish. So of all the people that have left the race, you were the fastest one of the ones who actually just made it. So it's a positive. It's a net
well,
positive.
in case anyone doesn't know,
you could be top 40 if you finish Paris-Nice, you know what I mean? Like,
well, in case anyone doesn't know, Lanterne Rouge means the red light, the red lamp, which is the last rider in the race. It's a name taken from the train, I think it is, the red lamp that used to be on the last carriage of the train. And Michael Merku from Quick Step Soudal, he was last, 6 hours and 7 minutes. Durbo, he was to finish 150th. Durbo finished 130th at 5 hours 16. So he was still an hour behind you, Durbo. Can you imagine being out there for another hour?
Another stage, mate. It's 5 hours.
Another stage, yeah. Well, he was exactly 6 hours, almost 2 stages these days. And that's what I want to talk about now, the evolution of the race, because I feel like the race has really evolved, especially this year from what I was watching, maybe just because I'm away from the race now. But one thing I really noticed looking back over the years, and I want to just sort of look at this 2003 I mentioned before, there was 198 starters, 147 finishes, 51 DNFs. And I sort of thought, well, this looked like one of the hardest tours I've seen for a lot of years. And Durbo, you can tell me how hard it was. But there was only 26 DNFs, did not finishes, 176 starters. That's because we're starting with one rider less per team these days. I don't know, Durbo. I think the evolution of the race is that the racing seems harder, faster, but everyone is more willing to, to have your Patakis. I was just watching the 2003 the other day. Pataki pulled out after stage 4. The first mountain stage literally stepped off Cipollini style. Could you imagine a guy doing that these days? Everyone's so willing to get to the end. I think that's the evolution of the race. But I think, Tom, you can also comment on that. But Durbo, what is the feeling, all the tours you've done, I can't remember exactly how many, I think it's 8 tours now you've done, Tour de France's, that, where does it rank?
Oh, well, it's 9, but that's
9.
fine.
That one, stage 1 counts, does it?
Yeah, it does. I started. Anyway, I got the medallion. No, I would say it's like probably one of the hardest tours, but I think we got to really look at the reason there was so many finishes was course related. The way they did the course, we didn't race in the north, and that's when all the enormous crashes happened. And we didn't start with ridiculous sprint stages to start with. So I spoke to a lot of the sprinters about this, and they loved the way the course was designed this year, because when we arrived at the first sprint stage, there was GC order, there was element of fatigue in the legs, and it wasn't and even the sprint stages that we had were designed quite nice. Like there wasn't really ridiculous there was small roads, but it wasn't chaotic. But normally we race up the top of the north, we go into Belgium, or we have Copenhagen, or we're in Holland or whatever. These are where the big crashes happen, because you have the GC stress, and then you have also the big engines who are fresh as a daisy, and it's just the yellow jersey's up for grabs, and it's just anyone can get it. Where when you rolled into Basque Country, 60 of us thought, okay, next 2 days we're just going to get through and not worry about it. So we left the GC guys alone, and there wasn't these, now I can say it out openly, there wasn't the massive crashes that we normally see. That's why there was so many finishes, I think.
What about, Tom, from your side of things, and I was talking about the evolution of the race just now, is that the race back in the day, I'm talking about in the 90s even, and not even that long ago, it was literally a lap of France in the sense of you saw the line sort of draw its way around. And of course, they got to a point where they needed to take the flight back to Paris. But they started and finished. When they finished in a town, they also started there the next day. And there wasn't these massive transfers that we see today, because I don't know if anyone understands this, but actually in order to do these crazy stages, these exciting stages, and move around the country so fast, the logistics of it, and you would know a bit more about this, it's quite big. Give us an idea of how much sort of transfers you guys are doing after the stages and before the stages.
To be fair, this year was quite good in terms of we didn't change hotels a lot. I think we had maybe 11 hotels, which is extremely rare. because we actually only we were always in this sort of close pocket down in the south of France. But regardless, I mean, at the Tour, you have to get there like an hour and a half before the start. Generally, you've got even if the drive is 30 Ks, it's going to take you 45 minutes to an hour to get there because all the buses turn up at the same time and they all have to be parked. Everyone's got 10 vehicles and the ASO have to manage all that. So you're having your breakfast 3 hours before, and then you got half an hour for that, and then you're off. Pretty much no matter where you start. If it's a long transfer, I think we had a couple of mornings when guys would take their breakfast and eat it on the bus even. Roll out of bed, go downstairs, get an omelette and some pasta and sit in your seat on the bus. And then after the stage, you've got, again, like it's always going to be an hour. In the mountains, it gets really difficult because the riders have to ride down from the top on their bikes down to the bus. The guy who finishes with the favourites has to wait for the guy who comes in the gruppetto, or when we had the mountains jersey and then you've got someone on control at the same time, gets delayed, and then it's like we've spoken about it before about jumping in a car, Mitch, and how rubbish that is to like jump in a car with a soigneuse to go and get your massage 10 minutes earlier. So it's like the days are super long. I mean, the riders eat dinner on a good day 8:30, on a bad day it could be 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. I mean, we got quite lucky this year because we only had 5 riders, and so it was only 1 massage. So then the cycle's much faster.
We got lucky.
And not really. And so I mean, the days are they're pretty long, and it takes it. I think even if you came and you just sat in a vehicle and you did nothing for the whole tour, right, you'd still be knackered after 3 weeks of getting up on that and driving around all day and getting hot and bothered. And so yeah. Big operation.
Well, let's finally just wrap up the tour very quickly here. Couple last questions for you both, and I'll just sort of direct them one at each other. Most combative jersey, Durbo. Do the riders actually give a shit about this jersey?
Oh, mate, don't start me
jersey,
about that.
But this award.
Don't start me about that.
That answers that.
Yeah. I think the what grinds my gears is that the rider they gave it to. It's unbelievable that Victor Campenuts.
Who got it?
Victor Campenuts. Come on. Like, the thing is, the reason he got it was because he attacked off the car every single day. But he was only in one breakaway that had any effect that was actually stayed away the line. Like, there was guys like Felix Gall, for example, who was going after it in the mountains, or Ciccone even, or like Askren, who won a stage. Actually, Askren, great one. He had 2
Plus, he was in other breakaways early in the race too.
It was literally just because it was like TV attack off the car, and even then at the start of the final stage of the Champs-Elysees, Victor Campenuts attacks off the car. Complete disrespect to the other jersey. Went away for a minute and a half, and it was just like.
Should have got it taken away from him for that fact. And Southam
should have been removed.
A fellow Brit, and big news, not great news, Cavendish crashing out before he get the record, and then Vinokurov throwing a spanner in the mix, going, you know what? I'm going to offer you a contract if you want, just to sort of tweak him a little bit. He was thinking about retiring. Will he be back? And can he get that infamous record if he comes back? That's the big question everyone's wondering.
Firstly, I think he would have probably won on the Champs-Elysees the other day, honestly. I think he would have got it. Because he is that good. But for me, the thing is, how much suffering he has to do. And it's not like he just rides around a Grand Tour, man. Like, you see the gruppetto sometimes and you see how hard it is for him. He's got to make a big decision. And it all depends on, what's the tour going to look like next year? Starts in Florence, finishes in Nice. So, it's not going to go to very many flat places, I would think. So if they do another tour like this year, options could be limited. So if I was him, I'd wait a little bit, let the dust settle, take the time to make the decision. Because let's be honest, he's racing for one thing now, and it's that one stage win. So a lot rests on whether or not the tour's going to suit him. It's not like he's going to race for one more year to go to the Giro or to go to the Vuelta. It's about this tour stage.
And it's also going to be a point where it's like, is all those cards going to line up too? If it's going to be in the first week, Cav's not going to win the stage, no offence. Like, he's not going to win the stage of the first week. He's going to have to wait for fatigue Like the Giro, for example, like I spoke to him in the Giro and at the tour, and he said, these idiots, they all rode too hard for 3 weeks, not even riding in the group pedo. And then when he rocked up to, in Rome, he smoked them because he rode it smart. And that's the thing with Cavendish. It's going to be difficult for him to actually arrive with all those cards,
Let's talk about what's coming up because it's happening just around the corner. And Durbo, you're heading off to the Worlds, which I can't believe it's 2 weeks after the tour, which is pretty crazy. And we've got the Super Worlds. Just quickly, what's your feeling about hitting the Worlds now, which must feel a bit weird because the Worlds normally needs the closing of the season? And what's your prediction on the form 2 weeks after the tour hitting the Worlds? Is something you've never done, I guess.
Oh, right now, I wouldn't be able to finish the first 10K, but I think I just have to wait. You know what I mean? I have raced quite well 2 weeks after the tour. Went to the Olympics a couple of years back, and that was 2 weeks after. And I just got to let the dust settle. So it's going to be a really, really insane, explosive World Championships. I think 950 metres is the longest straight. So it's going to be
sounds awesome.
Yeah, it sounds horrible. So it's all about freshening up now and recovering, and there won't the condition and load that you've got from the Tour de France is high, so you won't need much to sharpen up. But yeah, once I recover, then I'll go do some standing sprints. Maybe I could find a few bay crits to do. That would be more ideal, I think.
I wouldn't put it past you to create a bay crit. I know you've done that, and you've gone and created your own crit for training. And Southam, what do you think about the Super Worlds? Just quickly, this idea that they're going to do every 4 years, have it all there. They've left a couple of disciplines of cycling out of it. No cyclocross, and something else has been left out. So it's not really the super duper Worlds.
I actually love the idea. I think it's as close as most cyclists are going to get to doing a big games, like a Olympics or a Com Games or something, because you're going to have people from different disciplines. And I think part of I've never been to one, but part of the fun of one of those huge events is all the different people that are there.
Is there a village?
Your eyes open a little bit to that stuff.
How cool would a village be?
There must be a village.
It's got to be a village with a big bowl.
We're staying at a hotel, so I don't know what they're going to do. Yeah, I mean, I actually think that logistics-wise, federations hate them. I'm just talking to Gene Bates.
Villages?
Villages. Yeah, they're villages. But the logistics of the Super World, Gene Bates, he's just moved to Cycling Oz now, and he's just imagine just trying to too much.
All right, well, let's finish this up. We had heaps more to talk about, but we're banging on too much about the tour because it was so good. This wouldn't be wrapped up without a quiz, an infamous quiz. I do love a little quiz. So, boys, are you ready for the first edition of the Race Communique quiz?
Hit me.
Indeed.
I don't know how we're going to do this. I guess just chime in when you know. It's an A, B, C, D scenario, 3 questions. It's Tour de France themed. You ready to rock and roll? Maybe just use your name.
Okay.
Let's go.
Wait for me to read the A, B, C, D out. Or maybe just call it as soon as you know. Who has ridden the most Tour de France's? Is it A, Jens Voigt, B, Stuart O'Grady, C, Sylvain Chavanel, or D, George Hincapie? And for an extra point, you tell me how many they've ridden.
Chavanel.
Hincapie.
Durbo's correct. Chavanel, how many?
17.
Oh, Southam, to get a half point back, you can go for it again. It's not 17. George Hincapie's ridden 17.
18.
Well done, Southam. It's 1 all. Yes. Question 2. Which of these riders have finished last the Lanterne Rouge in the Tour de France the most times? Is it A, Roger Klug, B, Van Severen, C, Jimmy Casper, or D, Tim de Klerk?
A, Roger Klug.
A, Durbo, you're locking A in?
Honestly, I'll go for something different for the sake of it. Who were the other ones? It's not Van Sevenen, I don't think.
Jimmy Casper or Tim de Klerk?
No, it's not. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with A as well. It's just not right otherwise.
It's not.
No,
He's only finished once in 2020. Van Severen, you remember Van Severen? He rode for Silence Lotto. Jimmy Casper rode for FDJ and Tim de Klerk, as we know. So the answer is, you guys want to have another chance?
Casper, maybe? I don't know.
Van Sevenen then. Otherwise, he wouldn't be there. Go on.
Well done. Well done, Southam. 3 times, 08, 07 and 06, 3 times in a row. Got himself a little hat trick. Last question. Come on, Durbs. Who has the fastest winning Tour de France time overall? Is it A, Jonas Vingegaard, B, Lance Armstrong, C, Tadej Pogacar, or D, Egan Bernal?
Jonas Vingegaard.
Durbo's locking in A. Southam?
I'm going to go for... I'm going to go for Pogacar for the sake of it.
It is Jonas Vingegaard, and for an extra point, what year was that?
Last year.
Oh, Durbo. Well done. He's back.
I was
2 points for Durbo. 2022. He had 79 hours.
Was it 42 k's an hour or some shit?
That was, I don't know what the average is. You can work that out quickly. It was, 3,200 k just quickly off the top of your head.
I think it was like
79 hours.
42 and a half k's an hour or some shit.
Well, that was the actual order. B is Lance Armstrong, 2002, 20 years before, 82 hours. So it's got to do with the distances as well.
Because I remember we were talking last year, like we were on record for the fastest ever, and they're like, "When was the last one?" They were like, "Lance." I was like, "What?"
Oh yeah, they were hooting that year. Guys, thanks for being on the Race Communique. It's been fun, and we will check in next time. Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Well, there we go, guys. That is the first episode of the Race Communique. What did you think? I want to hear what you guys think. Is this worth putting out there for you guys to listen to? Is it interesting? I don't know. I had fun anyway talking to Durbo and Southam. They're two of my good friends, so we were just sitting back chewing the fat anyway, so no skin off our back. We enjoy having a chat, and it's a good reason for us to catch up and just talk about racing, our love. Big thanks goes out to Will Jones, who puts these episodes together. Our partner in the podcast this year at Life in the Peloton is Rafa, and a big thanks to them who are helping me put the podcast together this year. Loving working with them. And to you guys for listening. Next week will be a Life in the Peloton episode as per normal, and I've got a great episode for you then too. Let me know what you think of this. So guys, until then, cheers. The music in this episode was composed by Pete Shelley. Cheers, mate.